up story to me, but he claims that it's true. And my buddy Shappy talked to him, and I guess he's really bummed that he couldn't be here. I'm going to try to call him here maybe during the Q&A if I can get a hold of him, and I'll put him on the phone to apologize individually to each of you and everybody that I had to explain his absence to. But well, I figured what I would do first is tell you a little bit about kind of the backstory of Fanboys, which I'm sure a lot of you know like a lot about, but maybe there's some stuff that you don't know. So just kind of recap the history of it, and then we'll do a Q&A, and you guys can grill me about whatever you want. I did bring, and I brought some props and stuff that you guys are welcome to check out and pose with. I brought the Rush tape case from Hutch's van, and also the phaser gun that we used to suss out Trekkie bitches. Both of which I had to buy off of eBay. They wouldn't let me steal them from the set, but then everything, all the props and stuff, showed up. This is my buddy Shappy, who was an extra in Fanboys as well, and I'll let him answer some questions for you later as well. But the origin of Fanboys was my own bout with prequel mania. I was 1998. I was living in Austin, Texas, and working at an internet service provider doing tech support. So I was kind of in front of a computer on the internet all day, every day, and kind of ignoring my job and looking at prequel websites and like obsessively hitting refresh on theforce.net to see if there was any new, details. And I remember like the one guy who had put together like the virtual episode 1 prequel, like cobbled together out of all the information, and you could kind of, I just remember being so obsessed with this movie. And then a few years earlier, before this, my mom had passed away and of cancer, and I'd had this kind of morbid thought, like that summer in 1998, like, what if I knew that I was going to die and I wouldn't live to see episode 1? That would be horrible. Like so I had this like actual jolt of panic. I'm like, that is the most ridiculous thought in the world, but also like really frightening to me. Like I would really be upset if I knew I wasn't going to get to see this movie. And then my next thought was, well, what would I do if I knew that I wasn't going to live until May of 1999 to see this movie? And instantly I thought I would have to go to Skywalker Ranch and drive across the country and try to break in and see it early with my friends. And as soon as I had that idea, I'm like, that would be a great idea for a movie. And I didn't know if it would be like a Star Wars fan movie or something like on the level of like Troops, or I wasn't sure at first, but I just kind of started writing the story. And I remember, and this is all kind of in the fall of 1998, and it's right, when everybody was kind of freaking out, because you guys remember what it was like. I mean, there had been no new Star Wars for 15 years, so we had all been waiting for 15 years, and I really feel like that was kind of a unique time in the history of American cinema, because you are never going to have a movie that is the most anticipated movie of all time. Like, there's never going to be people lining up around movie theaters all over across the country and the world, like waiting weeks at a time for a movie. Some people would say that's never going to happen because so many of those people were so disappointed when they finally got to see the movie. But I think it's like there's no movie that's as beloved to a whole generation as Star Wars, and no franchise that kind of lay dormant for 15 years. So you had a whole generation of kids growing up wanting more of this thing from their childhood and not getting it until they were in their 20s. So that seemed like a really interesting setting backdrop for a time to write a movie. So and I really got into it as soon as I had the idea. I'm like, well, it's a road trip, so it's this journey to break into this kind of fortress. So it's like Star Wars, and so then I ended up getting Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell and reading that because I knew that had been part of George Lucas's inspiration for Star Wars, and I could see all the common elements and how kind of the Skywalker Ranch could stand in for the Death Star, and the print of episode 1 is like the stolen Death Star plans, with this thing that they're going after. So I could see all kind of how there could be all these parallels in the story, and that the van that they take on the trip could be like the Millennium Falcon, and all of that. So it just I had this avalanche of ideas and ways that it could work, and I wrote the script really fast in like a couple months, and showed it to a bunch of my friends in Austin, and they all loved it. And I said, I'm going to try to make this movie myself. I mean, I had no filmmaking experience. I just loved movies. Had always loved movies, and so I thought this could be my way to break into the movie business. I was going to try to do it with $20,000 with just money that I had saved up, and do it like Clerks, like Kevin Smith was a big inspiration for me, and also Robert Rodriguez, who lived in Austin, who had made El Mariachi for almost no money, and I was like, I could do this. I could make, like if Kevin Smith can make a movie about just guys talking at a convenience store, then I can make a movie about guys on a road trip to see, you know, a Star Wars movie and just talking about pop culture, and the van will just be my one main set. So I spent some of the money I had saved up and bought a van. Bucephalus was the name of it in the original script, and then I started to try to make this movie in Austin myself with no money. I quit my job working tech support and used like my meager savings, and then just started to try to, and I cast like local actors who were willing to work for free, and had all these friends who were going to help me try to make the movie. I wrote a part for my buddy Shappy to play himself. He was going to play, that's why the character that Seth Rogen plays, the head Star Trek fan, is named Admiral Seaschultz. And my buddy Shappy Seaschultz, I wrote that part for him to play himself. Of course, when Seth Rogen decided he wanted the part, then Shappy had to give bumped to an extra. He's still mad. Yeah, he's still mad at me about that. But it's funny, in the movie you can see Shappy standing behind Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen's kind of blocking him out of the scene. But so yeah, I started to try to make this movie, and I think what happened, like I quickly learned that I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never made a movie before, and writing movies is very different than making a movie, especially when you have no budget and you're kind of trying to do everything for free. And but while I was in the process of trying to make the movie, with really just a borrowed digital camera and a van, and you know, a bunch of other kind of local guys who were willing to help me out, the smartest thing that I did was I knew Harry Knowles, because he's another huge movie nerd that lives in Austin, and I would see him at film screenings and everything, and I wrote a part for Harry to play himself, because I was you know, mapping out the story, and I was like, well, if you needed to get access cards and you know, blueprints of Skywalker Ranch, and you wanted to break into a place like that, Harry Knowles is the guy that you would go to, because he has access to everything. Like I still remember in like early 1999, like right as I was still trying to make Fanboys, he had a copy of the episode 1 script that he had gotten somehow, like 5 months before the movie came out, and he let me come over to his house, and he wouldn't let the script leave his house because he knew people would photocopy it. So I had to sit there in his office, and he also had the score. Like somehow he had gotten this, like an early version of the score. He's like, I'm going to put the score on for you and let you read the episode 1 script. I was like, oh my god, this is clearly the guy that you would talk to if you needed to break into Skywalker Ranch. And actually, after I let him read the script, he's like, you know, I could get you this stuff if you wanted. I'm like, I'm sure that you could, Harry. But what happened was he didn't read it. I gave it to him, and like a week went by, he didn't read it. I sent him an email. He didn't email me back. And finally, I emailed him and said, Harry, I need to know if you're going to do this, because I'm going to start, you know, trying to film this movie in a few weeks. And if you're not going to do it, I need to find somebody else to play your part. He's like, okay. So he finally sat down and read it, and he read it all in one sitting. And then, without even telling me, he just went onto his website and wrote like a really long, glowing review about the script, and said, "This is the greatest script about being a fan that's ever been, you know, ever been written, and I loved it, and I think it's amazing." And just this great review, and I didn't even know he had done this. I woke up the next morning, and my email box is like, my inbox is like flooded with messages. Some of them from people in Hollywood saying, "I want to read this script that you wrote," and I'm like, how do these people even know about this? And then I saw Harry's website, and that, like, everybody in Hollywood reads his website every day. And so suddenly, like, this script that I had just written and I was just trying to make suddenly had all this legitimacy. Even though I had no money and no idea what I was doing, suddenly it was like a real project, and everybody was asking me about it and talking about it, and that, it was as a you know, that was like the first domino. And as a direct result of that, one of the producers of Fanboys, Matt Peninciaro, who hadn't produced any movies at that point, he was just a big Star Wars fan living on the East Coast, and he tracked me down online and said, you know, whatever happened with Fanboys? And this is, I mean, what had happened is after, so I got all this interest, and I got all this press attention, and the script was mentioned in Newsweek and the Village Voice. I'm like, wow, this is, you know, I can stop trying to make this as a little indie movie. And maybe get Hollywood to make it a real movie, and maybe have Lucasfilm involved. And I mean, it really seemed like suddenly, like that was possible. And so I stopped trying to make it because I wouldn't, you know, I shot like a few days of footage and like test footage with the digital camera, and it all, I mean, it looked crappy because I had no money and not professional actors who had never acted in a movie before, and I didn't know what I was doing, you know. All I really had was this script that everybody really responded to and reacted positively to. and then episode 1 came out. I remember I waited in line with Harry Knowles and a bunch of other Austin fans for like a week, you know. And that actually, the way that I feel about episode 1, I had more fun waiting and looking forward to episode 1 than I've ever had, you know, looking forward to any other movie. Like that was, I mean, even people who didn't enjoy episode 1, I think they have to, you know, admit to themselves that it was so much fun looking forward to that movie and being excited about it and waiting to see it. And the other thing is, as the most anticipated movie of all time, no movie is ever going to live up to that. To a whole generation wanting to relive their childhood, and it's like a new, you know, it's like trying to write a new chapter of the Bible or something, you know.